This is another response to WhatIfAltHist with the Incel revolution, World War III, a potential American Civil War. And I'm going to circle this back around for crypto and what does this mean for crypto and whether I think these different revolutions or what's going to happen with this. I actually think, and if you watched my last video about an American Civil War, I would say that it's not going to happen basically because the path of least resistance is to leave or to move to the sticks. And staying in the cities and kind of fighting it out or sort of taking up arms against somebody from another state or trying to invade a city state or sort of like engaging in that is just not going to be worth it. And this is part of the reason why the recruitment numbers are so low with the military. People see, they saw other people go, whether it be to Afghanistan or Iraq, and they got blown up by a roadside bomb or something like that. They said that they were basically, it was just BS. The whole thing didn't make any sense. And they came back, and let's say some of those people have kids at this point, and then so those kids don't really want to join the military. They don't really see the value in it. They don't see that it's going to get them ahead, various different reasons like that. So people aren't joining. And then even if you had some sort of draft, I just think that you'd have high likelihood that people would essentially dodge the draft by either moving to another country or just essentially just not showing up. This is my speculation, and I just think that, again, path of least resistance is just going to chill out on a beach in Bali or in Thailand or just go somewhere else. Try to get residency somewhere else or something like that if there was some sort of civil war. Secondly, people just have to work so hard just to even survive and put a roof over their head. So at the end of the day, even if people are mad, let's say they install Harris, which if the vote is true and fair, Trump wins by a landslide at this point with Robert Kennedy Jr. endorsing him. It's just a landslide. Harris would maybe get 25 or 30% of the popular vote. There's various different metrics that I've looked at. Leading up to that, most people know that the polls are just completely BS. And at the end of the day, if it was a true and fair vote, she wouldn't win. But I feel like there is high likelihood that they're just going to install her. She doesn't do interviews. She's supposed to be the vice president. We have two, candidates who went down to the border more than the president and the vice president combined. Kind of thing. We have talk show hosts and YouTubers going down to the border and reporting on the situation more than the president and vice president. We know that this is a facade. We're not stupid. And let's say the younger generation who feels disenfranchised, doesn't feel like they belong to anything, they can just quickly tell that something's not right. And they've seen enough stuff, whether it be Instagram reels or things online, that really kind of show them that our money has been devalued. The work that they're going to put in, this whole playbook that would have been from, the 1960s, they ain't going to fly. They ain't going to fly. And they don't kind of like this idea. And there's more information online, and you're able to kind of cherry pick. You see some of these people making money online, whether it be through YouTube, TikTok, and it could be crypto, it could be sports gambling. People are chasing after that. There's more people sports gambling, putting more money into sports gambling in the United States than there are people putting money into the stock market, which further shows you that it's propped up by these companies like BlackRock and various different things. People just, and the government's bought up a lot of bad debt and stuff like that. This whole thing is just kind of a facade. It's a house of cards. And, case in point, you see a lot of people chasing after continual crypto memes. They know they ain't going to get out of their situation by going to a job and working 60 hours a week and putting in 10 or 20 or 30 years. They're on quicksand. By the time their car breaks down, this and that, they're behind. They didn't make any money. And so they've obviously figured this out. We don't need to tell, guys who are 20, 22, 24, we don't need to tell them that. They already figured that out. And their prospects aren't looking good from a female perspective. So they are disenfranchised, and not just here, around the world. You know, in China, you have like this movement called, it's like Yang Ping, and it means laying down. And it's, you know, there's another one that's another word, another saying that's like let it rot. The youth in China doesn't really see a path to success either. You know, the 18 to 25 year olds or whatever. They feel the same way. There's a lot of people in the United States, a lot of people in Italy, a lot of people in South Korea, where they don't want to sit there and work for 40 or 50 years, you know, to what, get 5 years of retirement, where they're going to be, you know, all beaten up. They're not going to get to enjoy their life. So it feels helpless to them. And even if they do get all their ducks in a row, so to speak, and I've seen this over and over again, guys, here in the United States, guys that have, you know, they've got the money, they're over 6 foot tall, they have all this kind of quote unquote on paper what these women are supposedly looking for. They got a bit of game, they got a mouthpiece, you know, they can talk, and the women aren't impressed. Or the women that are impressed, it's such a date down, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, essentially. It'll be like an overweight single mom, you know, with 3 kids by 2 different baby daddies, and then the dude's like jacked, and you know, he's whatever, got properties, he has investments, he's able to travel the world, and in her mind, that's what she belongs with. She doesn't think she's overweight. She thinks she belongs with this dude who's like, you know what I mean, has everything put together, so to speak, or has all these kind of points like on paper. And again, like I said, this neat thing, not in employment or education, is taking place here in the United States, where people are doing the bare minimum, because it's like, well, what are they going to get? If they put in 60, 80-hour weeks, what are they going to get? Are they really going to get out of the situation? If they live in their car, live in their van, you know, do all this kind of stuff and work 60 hours a week, are they going to get ahead? And it's still going to be tough. Like, all those things being said, it's still going to be tough. Because again, our money has lost so much value. The money is worth 1/3 as much as it was 20 years ago. And there's been some comparisons made for Gen Z. Gen Z people at the age of 20, their money is 95% less valuable than it was for the baby boomers when they were 20 years old. So this whole premise that you're going to go to the factory, you're going to put in the hours, you're going to thug it out, you're not going to get ahead. And people have kind of warmed up to that. It's like, you'd almost have to camp in the parking lot. And I'm not trying to say this like, oh, this is BS, and you know, these companies need to pay more. They're trying to survive too. Their feet have been swept out because the value of the currency has been devalued. So you got to think of the entrepreneur on the other end that put in, he sacrificed everything. He basically put all his money in, you know, try to build up this company, got all these employees and stuff like that. He's not making it by. They're looking at bankruptcy. It's a very competitive market out there, and it's very tough to kind of continue to perpetuate it and come out with anything. You can end up being in a situation where your employees actually, in some respects, make a little bit more than the business owner. And at the end of the day, the employees aren't really getting paid that well either. So again, it's tough out there. It's competitive. And, you know, our countries have sold us down the river. They've devalued our currency. And as we talked before, that is one of the main things that does lead to revolution, does lead to civil war. But I don't really see the civil war happening here, like I said in the last video, because the path of least resistance is to GeoMaxx to the sticks, live kind of bare minimum, make some money online, whether that's eBay, Amazon, crypto, sports gambling, that kind of stuff. Basically have a situation paid off. There's situations in Arkansas where you can buy land, and if you don't do over a certain amount of improvements on the land, you don't pay property tax. So if you did get to a point where you bought a little bit of land, had it free and clear, kind of lived off the land, you didn't have the property tax, and you had an internet connection and your computing equipment, you could kind of thug it out. And but again, we're not trying to make you a Unabomber type character where you're just vengeful against the world and you've had to hunker down. There's no women around. That's kind of that's the other side of it. You could move to Japan and buy one of these houses for little to nothing, and then like nobody's around and the population has collapsed. That's, you know, again, you kind of end up in a situation, kind of moving to the sticks and nobody's around, kind of out of your element, so to speak. And then it's like, well, what I've seen in the Midwest is a lot of people gravitate towards the city centers and they're chasing the women. They're chasing the women. This is something that's not said a lot of times. Why did the Vikings try to come to North America or try to look for more land, more resources and women? It's something that they don't really kind of talk about a lot of times in these history books. These guys were disenfranchised, maybe kind of getting ignored. They didn't kind of have all these things in place and they needed to search for women. Why do these lions kind of roam around? Why do these bears, in Arizona, for instance, you have the Sky Islands, these bears will go kind of mountain range to mountain range, essentially, looking for women. So this is something that's not really talked about a lot. And as I see, guys will gravitate towards Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Columbus, Ohio. Maybe they gravitate towards Grand Rapids, towards, you know, these types of city centers. Maybe they try to go to suburbs of Chicago because everybody kind of left. And then you sort of, in these smaller towns, what I've noticed at kind of the gyms, you might have one, maybe two women that you would take an extended look at. And the obesity rates are out of control. And, you know, we've talked about that in Robert Kennedy Jr. It's one of his talking points, one of his platforms. He wants to make America healthy again. They're just, the obesity rates are just out of control. So again, juice isn't worth the squeeze. Guys aren't getting any play. Even guys who are built up and have like all these things on a checklist, it's not happening. Now, why do I think that World War III is more likely than the Civil War, an American Civil War? It's not that it's bad here. We've got a lot of problems in the United States, but it's not bad to the point where you've lost everything and you're just reckless, like with no hope kind of thing. It was just easier if you thugged it out and you got out of here, or you GeoMaxxxed either within the United States or, like I said, Thailand, Bali, Croatia. You know, you could move to Italy, you could try Spain, you could travel around Argentina. There's one guy I follow actually on Instagram. His name is like Christian Gross or some red-haired dude. He loves Argentina. He's just like, man, it's beautiful here. This is great. A lot of these places, if you get your money up a little bit in the United States, you could perpetuate it for quite a while. I go to the story, and the money's been devalued since this time, but in 2019, I went to Thailand for a month. And even with round trip flight from Chicago and going, you know, to Bangkok, spending like kind of balling out there. I was like in a hotel with a rooftop pool, you know, one of the infinity pools, the whole thing. I was doing that. I went down to Phuket. I was, you know, just kind of going crazy. Then I went to the Phi Phi Islands, went back down to Phuket to like another area. Then I went back up to Bangkok. I was all over the place. I spent $2,800 for a month of being there. And when I tell people that, they're like, what? Like, you did all that, you went all that with the flight, with the hotels, with the food, everything, $2,800. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, that's when I really realized there was no value hardly left in the United States. And now it's gotten worse. Fast forward 2024, it's gotten way, way worse. But it's still not that bad. You can still kind of pump these people up or kind of get them kind of, again, churning their wheels, working for decades potentially and stuff like that. And I don't really see things spinning out of complete control for another 10 or 20, more likely 20 years, where in 20 years things will really kind of unravel quite a bit more. We're going to be in a worse debt crisis. It's going to be very, very, very hard to get ourselves out of all the money that's been printed in the last, you know, 7 or 8 years. And this is one thing, a lot of Trump supporters and stuff like that. And I'm not talking bad about Trump. I think that Trump and RFK are our best chance at this point to hopefully make some positive things happen and stuff and get ourselves out of this. And I think both of them, and myself and one of the guys, one of my friends actually in Arizona, sleeper agent Steve McClare, he, we both agree that we think that RFK and Trump are kind of in the fuck it stage. So any of this thing that Trump was worried about, certain things that were going to happen in his first presidency, this time I think that he's gonna I mean, the dude almost got his head taken off, so come on. Yeah, and it's like, okay, RFK, like that's a team. And I like RFK. I like a lot of stuff RFK says. He calls out the BS, and I think we're gonna hopefully uncover a lot of secrets and a lot of stuff that's been hidden from us by the US government and stuff like that. That being said, they have a lot that they're going to have to work their way out of. There was $8.4 trillion printed in the Trump administration, and there's maybe been almost 7 trillion or something in the Biden administration that's been disclosed to us. So at this point, and it's like our national debt is up around 35 trillion. So that's a significant fraction. Basically half of all the money supply practically has been printed since about 2014. And the interest on the debt is so high because interest rates are high right now. And we are just in quicksand. Everybody's in quicksand. The people are in quicksand. The country's in quicksand. And we are not in a good situation. That being said, we still got a runway, 10, 15, 20 years. You could kind of thug out, try to carve out something, found out you still have the ability to jump on board of like AI related stuff. You still have the ability to trade crypto. You could sports bet. I've seen some people kind of snack some decent wins. If you kind of know what you were looking for, obviously there's a bit of luck with that because you don't know if somebody goes down with an injury. There's all this kind of stuff, and somebody could kind of level up and kind of work their way out of this. Also, kind of our shipping lanes kind of thing. And when I say that, I'm talking like US Postal Service, FedEx, the ability to ship stuff around with Amazon. Like we've actually got a pretty good postal system if you're going to be doing e-commerce and you're sending stuff, but again, you have a lot of competition coming from Temu, coming from these Chinese related outfits and stuff like that. But you can find a niche. There's enough people in the United States and in Canada, and with like eBay global shipping program, all these kind of things, you can find an in, and you could kind of get out of it, or find your niche, kind of thing. But that being said, in 20 years, way bigger problem. So again, path of least resistance is probably to GeoMaxxx and still try to push through. And I would say about 10% of Gen Z is pushing and doing it. And then I would say 5% of that 10%, so upper 5% percentile, is actually doing it by kind of legitimate means. And I'd say the other 5% that's pushing it, they're doing it by kind of like questionable means. Like for instance, athletes, they have access to like performance enhancing drugs a lot more. I've seen that. A lot of guys taking SARMs, and you see these guys like the Trend Twins. These guys kind of blow up. Bradley Martin, obviously he's more of a millennial, but they see these guys, those are the guys they looked up to. And so these guys are willing to cheat at all costs. Now you could say, yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone and those guys, Hulk Hogan, all those guys, they were taking steroids and they were going by like illegitimate means. And obviously the Mark McGuires, the Barry Bonds, but they took a lot of flack. The Barry Bondses, the Jason Giambis, Mark McGuire, like the Sammy Sosas, they took a lot of flack actually for it. But then it's almost like this new generation. You have these guys coming out, Larry Wheels, those kind of guys, they're just kind of openly kind of saying, I take this, and which I actually kind of respect that a little more. They're kind of, and he's not playing a sport, so he's just trying to be this kind of like freak show, I guess, or just lift like a ton of weight. But he's being open about it. Rich Piana was kind of open about it. So for these guys, I've never taken performance enhancing drugs. I've never taken TRT. I've never taken HGH, none of that kind of stuff. So, and I tell the younger kids, like a lot of these guys that are taking it in their 20s are going to destroy their endocrine system. Now, all that being said, they're messing themselves up, but why are they doing that? It's because they're not getting any play, and they're trying to elevate their game some way, somehow, to make something of themselves, to try to like level up against the competition. But you're better off, honestly, just eating clean, getting your rest, doing everything that you can do, and GeoMaxxxing if that's your thing. Because, like, again, these guys who are taking trend, they're doing this and that, they're not doing it for their health. And a lot of guys won't actually verbalize this or actually come to this conclusion or write this down and stuff, like, but in this world, we're doing everything for women. All this stuff has been built for women to make women more comfortable. And a lot of people never actually come to that realization. They say, well, that's not, why are these countries, that doesn't make any sense. Why is there this? But for the most part, you can track it all back to that. Why do we have fighter jets? Why are these people flying around? They're jockeying for land. They're jockeying for resources. There's no women there. Just, you know, in general, and like I talked about the animals going vast distances and stuff and going over, it's essentially to spread their seed. It's to procreate. And that same code is in here. So every man that has any level of testosterone or any kind of level of fitness or sort of, you know, is active and stuff, they're going to be seeking that out. Now, have there been a lot of people giving up? Yes, they, you know, they've become so kind of like their body's not functioning to a point where, you know, they're not really active. They're not lifting. They're mentally just not there and stuff like that. And they've given up. And only in this modern world can they sort of semi-survive doing that. But in a more primitive environment, you're always going to be kind of pushing to survive and to, you know, essentially spread your seed and procreate and stuff like that. So that's the internal code, you know, that we have and stuff like that. So as far as this incel revolution, I don't really see, you're not going to change the women. You're not going to, like, there might be like little instances and stuff like that where they try to test you and you have the willingness to walk away and these different things, and you're able to work this kind of set of game and stuff like that. But all in all, if you're doing this for multiple years and you're not seeing the traction, you're seeing all these other guys, they're saying they're dropping out, they're going, you know, I always say I'm going elite monk status, because at the end of the day, just the amount of time that you're kind of spending with it and stuff like that, it's just, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And I've seen so many of these guys, and I'd say 95% of sort of relationships and stuff like that, you look at it and it's like, it makes no sense. It's just like, and it's hard for me to even talk about it because it seems almost spiteful or mean, or I'm sort of talking down about the women or kind of the situation or these guys and stuff like that. But I've seen dudes who are, you know, professional baseball players, you know, that played affiliated ball, they played, you know, the Reds organization, Marlins organization, and they were 6'3", you know, throwing gas, and you know, they ended up getting with a single mom. And you're just thinking, now, would they have gotten with that single mom if there was all these other options? There was all these chicks who were getting back with them, who were hot, and they were 22, 23, 24, 25. Chances are no. They would have felt like, well, I've got all these other women. Usually it came down to the situation where they had been out there working games so long, and it's kind of like that with sports and stuff. Like, when are you going to hang them up? When are you going to hang up? When are you going to stop playing? When are you going to stop being a part of the game? And you're going to kind of quote unquote settle. And you're like, well, okay, I worked all this game and I went all over the United States, and this is what I end up with, you know, a 368-pound single mom with, you know, 3 kids by 2 different baby daddies. You know, that's my, you know, I'll treat them like they're my own, you know. So but I'm seeing a lot of guys doing that. I'm not trying to make too hard. I know some of you guys maybe did have a stepdad and he tried to do his best and he swooped in there and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, a lot of you guys are going to end up being single moms if you stay in the United States. If you stay in Canada, if you stay in the United States, it's a single mom apocalypse. I'm just being straight up with you. Because, and you know, to what respect are you going to play, let's say, religion game that you maybe don't believe in? Are you going to become an Orthodox Christian or something like that? Are you going to become Amish? Are you going to try to become Mormon and learn some scripture and tell women this, and, you know, maybe get, you know, a Bible verse or something tattooed on your arm? How much religion game are you willing to play and then be jacked and be tall enough and have the right color eyes and not have a gap in your teeth all this stuff, that it's going to actually work for you. So again, I've just seen it. I've had a lot of conversations with my friends, and even guys, we're talking guys with boats, with supercars, with, you know, working heavy religion game, guys who are 6'3", 6'4", athletic, have game, they're not stupid, they have college degrees, so on and so forth, all this kind of stuff. They got money. They're all running into the same thing. So, you know, and you can see some of these videos online, and I've seen the comments where like, wow, man, if this dude is dropping out, that shows you where we're at, you know what I mean? So I'm not even talking about myself. I'm talking about all these other guys, I'm talking about the guys that are playing college basketball that I've played ball against, like at the Y, you know, that kind of stuff. And I see the situation, and they're not in a relationship, or I see other guys who just graduated college athletes. I've seen it firsthand. I've coached at a couple colleges. You know, I've seen this firsthand. I see the dynamic that's taking place, and there's always an issue. There's always an issue. There's always supposedly something else out there, and women think that they have unlimited time and unlimited options. Now, how does this bring us back to the revolution, the incel revolution that WhatIfAltHist talks about? I just don't see. I think the revolution is just the GeoMaxxxing scenarios, and you know, obviously people trying to looks max, GeoMaxx, and yeah, will there be some dudes who are going to, as a coping mechanism, they're going to become a fentanyl zombie or a ketamine zombie? For sure, they're going to have the coping mechanisms. They're going to be high on weed. They're just going to play Call of Duty. They're going to play, you know, just going to play games and stuff, and they're going to drop out as a coping mechanism. But as like a revolution, like people are going to be like, wait a minute, you know, this is BS, you know. I just think they're just going to GeoMaxx, and it's went too far that the whole system would have to kind of really just fall apart. Because again, there's going to be so few girls, so few women, so few and far, you know, so like few and far between kind of thing, who are this quote unquote good girl, and she came from a good family and stuff like that. So one of the anecdotal things is the high school that I went to, you know, again, small high school in a rural area. And, you know, I was talking to someone who works there, and they said that 80% of the kids are in single parent households. 80%. That is rural Midwest United States. Olympus has fallen, you know, and it's going to get worse. So again, they use the court system. They do this. This is part of their game. This is like a career move. Get people in their ear. Oh, you don't have to deal with him. These guys ain't shit. You know, whatever. But you're not going to change them. I'm not going to change them. You're not going to change them. And a lot of times when I see the women who maybe didn't come from that upbringing, you're even seeing them have traction issues, and they're not kind of like linking up with the right guys either. It's not happening as much. And I think even with the Amish community, a lot more of the people are staying in Rumspringa a lot longer. I was down in Florida 2 years ago. This was 2022. And a couple dudes that were around Cape Canaveral, they were Amish, and they were at the bar and they were drinking. I started talking to them, and I was like, well, I mean, are you guys on Rumspringa, or like, what's kind of the deal? And I'm thinking, usually you're going to start that when you're 16, and you know, you're going to end it maybe around whatever 2021. But what used to happen is they used to knock up some girl at a barn party, and then they would do a quick shotgun wedding. And then the dude would start growing a beard. He'd give up his keys to his car, and guess what? He's Amish. He's in the Amish church, and whatever. They're doing the whole lifestyle. These dudes are 24. Really shouldn't have been at the bar drinking. So kind of the poles of modern society are pulling on the Amish, are kind of causing them to extend things out longer and longer and longer than they would have 20, 40, 60 years ago. Because again, when they're in Rumspringa, they can have a cell phone. They could end up being on Instagram. They could go to public school. And then it's like, it's just getting harder and harder and harder for them to kind of work back out of that. So I just don't see any kind of revolution. Like people aren't going to be like up in arms and stuff. This is BS. You know, these women don't act right and stuff like that. It's going to go to another part of the world. Now, whether that's Southeast Asia or that's Eastern Europe, one of the guys that I follow, you know, it's like Tribe of Men, this Bo Refek guy, I think that's how he's pronounced his last name. You know, I think a lot of people are kind of cluing into what he's doing. He's from Romania, so he already kind of knows the language. He moves to Romania. Seems like he's doing great there, you know. So you just see enough of these stories. There's a couple other guys down in Brazil, you know, where they're just, and I believe everything they're saying. I've traveled enough, guys. I've traveled all over the United States. I've been up to Canada. I've been to Thailand. I've been down to Mexico. I've traveled around enough and talked to enough people where, you know, again, there's definitely greener pastures out there. You're going to get more traction other places. So I don't see a revolution, an incel revolution necessarily happen here besides the GeoMaxxxing thing. As far as World War III, why would World War III be more likely than an American Civil War? Now, with Canada as the example during the scamdemic, you had the trucker rally. Things got really bad. They drove West Coast clear to Ottawa. They posted up. I was definitely in support. It was like, yeah, you know, but they started levying these guys bank, you know, they started like seizing up these guys' bank accounts. They started smashing out their windows and stuff like that. And ultimately the government got them out. And even as bad as it got there, which I would say that whole situation, it got to a tipping point where they were like, enough is enough. We're not dealing with this anymore. And it got that bad, but they still were able to shut that down. Now you can say that, oh, the Canadians don't have as many guns. They still have firearms. They still have hunting rifles and stuff like that. Now in the United States, that is part of the reason why in a World War III situation, we wouldn't be occupied. We got too many people with all out arsenals. We got more guns than people in the United States. And, you know, so occupation from another foreign nation is almost impossible. It almost have to be an advanced alien race or something like that with advanced tech or something to really occupy us. That being said, as bad as it got in Canada, they did not end up having a civil war, and they had a ruling minority. About 35% of people or something in Canada voted for Trudeau. And so the majority of people didn't actually want Trudeau in power. He was hiding from the whole situation, didn't want to address it, and he's just one of these, I don't know, World Economic Forum puppets or whatever. So there's a lot of people, and they still didn't have a civil war up there. Here, again, like I said, path of least resistance. It's going to be easier to move to the sticks, to a state that is more aligned with your thinking, or a country, another country where there's greener pastures, as far as that's concerned. Now World War III, back to World War III. Why would we have that? So the world is becoming very, very unstable. There's a lot of this kind of freedom of speech stuff that's kind of coming from the forefront. There's a lot of, you know, mass immigration and stuff in places like UK. I feel like the UK has more of a chance of having a civil war than the United States, and various different countries, whether that be Venezuela. I would say there's more of a potential to have a civil war there than there is in the United States, because it's gotten so much worse. It's gotten so much worse in the United States. Now, what's going to happen when they install Harris into the White House? Well, most people are just going to have to go back to work. They're going to have to work 80 hours a week to try to put food on the table and try to pay their stupid car payment, and all these increasing insurance payments and all this stuff for car insurance and house insurance and all this kind of stuff. And so the people might be upset, but they're just going to have to go back at it and just kind of get back to work. From a world perspective, there's got to be some of these countries that are going to look weak. Ukraine has now invaded Russia. Now, I'm pretty surprised about that. What kind of situation is Russia really in if Ukraine is able to actually get in there and invade them and actually occupy little areas and stuff like that? And maybe they make a push for Moscow. Then the Russian people start thinking, maybe we're not as strong as we thought we were. Maybe, you know, and I'm sure there's a lot of the Russian youth that are like, this is BS, man. We shouldn't have attacked Ukraine. I don't want to be involved in this. I'm sure there's a lot of that. And then there's probably people that kind of, some kind of deep-seated thing from generations ago or something, that are just like, you know, screw you, Ukraine, that's our land, or, you know, whatever. You got these different factions and stuff like that. You're going to have both on both sides and stuff like that. But at the end of the point, a lot of these countries are broke. They're broke. They can't allocate the resources. And in these military kind of situations, the expenditure becomes very, very, very high. And how much are they producing? What if Trump gets in power? What if Trump and RFK are in there? And what if they do start exporting more fuel? And then maybe that weakens Russia. And then maybe powers that be are mad enough at Russia that they make a jump at it to overthrow. But it's more likely to kind of overthrow these smaller nations. One that's kind of weakened or don't have the type of military infrastructure to sort of kind of take over them. And that might be some kind of thing, you know, like the Taiwan situation. Because when they look at Harris and they look at Walt, it looks weak. Very, very weak. See, the thing with Trump is these other nations, leaders and stuff, Trump conveys a certain level of respect. And this is something a lot of people don't pick up on. Before this RFK thing happened, I could tell people respected Trump. Trump respected RFK. RFK respected Trump before this, ever even months before this. And I was really upset because it was like, you know, they're not letting RFK talk. They're making fun of him on the news. They're not letting this guy talk. They're trying to keep him off the ballots with the polls. They don't put him up there to act like he doesn't exist. It was ticking me off. Now, obviously, he gave a great speech and kind of explained all this, why he was backing Trump in the swing states, 10 swing states. And that being said, I could just see that they had a certain, even though they didn't see eye to eye, I could see that they had respect for one another. They knew each other had been through the trenches. They'd been through a lot to get where they got. And, you know, I see this in athletics a lot of times where it's like, you don't know what another guy has been through to get to where he's gotten, but you know he went through hell. So you have a level of respect. Like, okay, this guy's still out here. He's still playing. He's still doing this. He's still doing that. And I do see that with the younger generation. I know this kind of seems like a side topic, but the younger generation that is really pushing it, they do give me respect. And I think a lot of you guys have probably had the same situation happen to you, where maybe the young bloods, they do throw respect to you. And sometimes you're kind of curious about it. You're like, you know, it's kind of crazy you're getting that much respect from the younger generation, because they want to know how you've been able to build up, or how you've been able to do this or get this. And they are picking your brain, and they do show you level of respect. But then the women, the respect is very fleeting. It's almost like they act like they're above you when sometimes you shouldn't even be talking to them. And you're just like, this is just busted. This whole game is busted. Well, how am I getting this much respect from these other guys? But I've noticed with myself, I always give the older generation respect and pick their brains, kind of these elder bosses and stuff that have stayed like in shape into their 50s and their 60s and their 70s. And then you also pick the brain of the younger guys, because their game is more advanced. And I'm going to be the first one to say this whole thing of, you'll see this with these basketball players, and you'll see it with the NBA guys and stuff, you know, obviously